Do you have elder siblings, wizard?
You're about to say something awful, aren't you?
In Menzoberranzan, after a house has 2 sons, every subsequent male-born child is slaughtered at birth, as it is useless, even for breeding. You have the aura of a 3rd child about you.
Mommy Minty. We love when you give us the backstory to really make that insult sting. But today, we're going to take your best Gale insult and dive headfirst into all that juicy lore. So, let's discuss the 3rd sons of Menzoberranzan. Before we begin, let's quickly explain the Lothsworns. If you've been watching my new series Viper, you're already up to speed, but if this is your first ride into the Underdark, buckle up. Lothsworns are a subrace of Drow, also known as Underelves or Dark Elves. Lothsworns are sworn to worship the Spider Queen, the goddess Lolth. Lolth is one of the most evil goddesses in Faerun, and in all of the Forgotten Realms. To fully understand Minthara's statement, we need to address the life in Menzoberranzan. Menzoberranzan is one of the largest cities in the Underdark, and it is the hub for Lothsworn, although they are able to live in other places. This city is extremely classist. They function in a caste system, which makes noble, long-established houses reign supreme. Those who are low-born, meaning they're born outside of the noble houses, have to work their way up in Drow society. And the best way to do that is to become a cleric. Menzoberranzan is a matriarchy. Among the upper castes, women rule. Men are second-class citizens. And lowborns, well, they're third class. Personally, it gives me indentured servants, I'm practically a slave kind of vibes, but technically, they aren't slaves. But again, they might as well be considering how they're treated in a lot of supplemental material. And the key part of that social norm is where we begin to understand the third-born sons of Lolth. So, what is the third-born son rule? The rule is that the noble houses sworn to Lolth must sacrifice their third-born sons to Lolth. Keep in mind, we aren't talking about an adult. The sacrifice happens shortly after birth. Lolth is a goddess who already makes very heavy demands for blood sacrifice. Her clerics must make at least 1 blood sacrifice every 10 day, aka a Faerunian week. Minthara mentioning this rule to Gale is actually an Easter egg to one of the fictional series in the Forgotten Realms, the Dark Elf trilogy by R.A. Salvatore. Except, as we all know, Minthara likes to be ruthless, and in doing so, she wasn't fully honest here. Firstly, she implies that this is all of Menzoberranzan, which it's not. Secondly, not everyone will partake in this, air quotes, law. So why does Lolth ask for this sacrifice? As Minthara said, it's a way to curb the population, as you only need the heir and the spare to continue a bloodline. However, it's deeper than that. Lolth was a consort of Corleon, the god of all elves. Now I know what you're thinking, consort. Isn't that what we are to Astarion? Yes, and in more supplemental materials for D&D E5, gods, they don't take brides or grooms, they take consorts. A lot of people might assume that a consort is like a mistress or a concubine because it sounds very similar to the word courtesan. However, in the case of gods, consorts are more akin to the historical definition in the UK, which, according to the Royal Collection Trust, a consort is the title of a wife or a husband of a monarch who has no constitutional power. This means that they're the life partner to a god, but they're not given the status of god themselves. The title was used to mirror monarchy among gods and mortals in D&D. He was later gifted a leadership position with Corleon, and I'm gonna butcher this name, Sakanen, as the heads of the Elven pantheon. However, according to Evermeet, Island of Elves, Lolth, who at the time was also known as Arushin, grew jealous of her husband and discontent with her station. So she committed treason and attempted to overthrow her husband and take his throne and power. After she failed, Lolth was exiled. She conquered the 66 layers of the Abyss, becoming the queen of the demon pits. In a mirror to her own struggles, she gives women status over men in Menzoberranzan, and she also considers love to be a taboo. So, if this law is not always followed, what are the exceptions? The first exception is non-dedicated nobles. Lolth had a son with Corleone named Veyron. Veyron started a movement against Lothites, creating a society where men could have equality. Even though he died and most of his followers left to join Shar, something that we touched on in the Viper series, some of his loyalists stayed in Menzoberranzan. He created the beginning of what would essentially be the end. Not all noble houses are fully dedicated to Loth anymore, even if they outwardly claim to be. Those noble houses who are more inclined to other gods, well, they're not offering to make that sacrifice. They owe Loth nothing unless they fall into her disgrace. And having more offspring, well, that means more warriors who can assassinate their way to even more power. As a commenter made a great point on one of the shorts inspiring this video, the law isn't strictly having only 2 sons. So logically, if you had a 4th or 5th son, they wouldn't have to be killed. As well, I'd like to add to that note that they left that it also isn't 3rd sons of the house overall. If you have a 3rd son, it's from each bloodline. So let's say Drow A has 2 sons and Drow B has 2 sons. All 4 of those men would still be safe under this law. Bloodlines are continued by each matriarch in the house, and the son is determined by their direct line to that matriarch. Before going into the next exception, the beloved story of Dritz, we have something that we need to hit. I need you to hit that like button if you're enjoying videos like this. Every single like gets us a step closer to more juicy lore. But more importantly, it lets me know what you actually want to see. Hands down, Dritz is the most beloved male drow in fictional tales of the Forgotten Realms period. He's starred in 11 different book series, making his debut in the Dark Elf trilogy by R.A. Salvatore. He also has been in some other collections and even short stories. Now, in middle school, I was obsessed with R.A. Salvatore and Pierce Anthony. Dritz was born a 3rd-born son in a Loth-sworn house. He was actually destined to be sacrificed. However, on the night of his birth, his older brother, Nelfin, was assassinated. This made Dritz into the new 2nd son of the house, and thus saved him from being sacrificed. So the 3rd son rule only applies when there isn't 2 more sons before them, which means that another exception is in the case in which one of the 1st sons or 2nd sons in your direct line is no longer viable to breed into the new future. Dritz does have some fun lore himself that ties into Baldur's Gate 3. For example, did you know that at one point he held the alias in the House Obuldra? Yeah, her house. So if you want a video on the time that he was in the House Obuldra and how that relates to the fall of Araja's family, comment some back emojis for me. The final exception is low-born drow. This law is more voluntary in low-born houses than it is in noble houses. This one was new to me, as it's pretty rare to craft a Loth-sworn drow who's not from a noble house or in the clergy for a character. But after looking into this comment, I discovered the world of low-born drows and their distinct society compared to nobles. Low-born drow are 3rd class, but unlike their noble kin, they're not forced to have a gender-based caste system. They're all equally worthless under the rule of one noble woman. Despite thinking it would be less common among lowborns because they would need to have as many children as possible to work towards building their favor, it's not. It's actually more common. There's no definitive official text on how often lowborns partake compared to nobles, but based on the way their social structure is organized and how they're explained to seek Loth's favor at every chance, through their own blood sacrifices, it's safe to assume that they make this sacrifice more than nobles do, because it would benefit them more than it would a noble. If you love dives into the lore of Lothites, be sure to check out my series Viper. And thank you for being here. Because gaming and writing, they're my passions. And with subscribers like you, I get to express those passions. I love this community that we've built together and the shared love of Baldur's Gate that we have, and I am unbelievably excited to go on this journey, diving into the lore of Baldur's Gate and D&D and ADHD info dumping on you. So I'll see you all in the next one, darlings.
And now you're all mine. And I'm all yours. Until morning, at least.